All right, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to the Free Friday coaching call. For those of you that are on here for the first time, we want to welcome you. For those that are repeat followers and audience, want to welcome you back. This call takes place the first and third Fridays of every month, and it's something that Rick Gios started for the real estate community, for people that were in the business, wanting to work on mindset and skill set, because for years, as he traveled the world and spoke and trained and taught, he would give out his personal cell number and he would say, call me anytime you need anything. People would do that. And all of a sudden he had capacity issues because there was one of him and the many was getting to be many. So the purpose of him creating this call was as a way to be able to add value and be in conversation with a larger collective group of people that could come to where he was going to be. From yeah, Kevin told him to stop doing that. How'd that work? No, it didn't work. His seat was so low in the disc profile. You tell him to stop, and he's like, "Let me show you why that's not a good idea." So anyhow, we have committed to continuing that call, and with the same vision and the same legacy. And it's taken on a little bit of a different approach now. We've got multiple voices, which is incredible and amazing, and still the same commitment to supporting growth through mindset and skill set and leveling up in those ways. And so, Laura, if you could turn the entry chimes off as people come in, that would be great, because I know people will continue to join us as we get moving here. For those of you that are catching it on replay, or those of you that will be back to catch this on replay, empirebuilders.pro is the site that houses this and many other of the calls and trainings that we do. And you can find those on YouTube channels that are in there as a point of reference as we jump in this morning. So we have a guest that I'm incredibly excited to have on this morning. Oh my goodness, it was many, 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 many years ago that our families were all together in San Diego for a fun little trip. And gosh, a lot has happened since then. But Kevin Kauffman is our guest for this morning. He hails from Arizona, and since 2008, has been in the real estate industry, co-founder of Group 4610 with his partner, Fred. He also hosts a podcast called The Kevin and Fred Show, and is co-founder of one of the largest online masterminds in real estate. What I love about Kevin is that he is who he is. You always, what you get with Kevin, you will always get consistency. Like for all of the years that I've known Kevin, he says what he's going to do, he follows through on it, and it's always an under promise, over deliver experience with him. One thing I also really appreciate about him is that he has taken his unique style and owned it. Right. So for those of you that don't know Group 4610, I have a pair of flip-flops in our closet that Rick wore on stage with Kevin and Fred at some point, that have Group 4610 on them, because they're very committed to shorts and t-shirts and hats, and being able to be who you are in your profession and really embrace that and have fun with it, and bring something unique to the industry. So Kevin, want to welcome you onto the call this morning. Thank you so much for being here. And just as we jump in, there's people from all different stages in real estate, from new agents to seasoned agents, everything in between, different companies from all over the place. And yet the one thing that is unique to each person on this call is that everyone has a story that's brought them to the industry and what they really want to get out of it. And so in 2008, when you came to the industry, what were you looking for, and what would you say is your favorite part about still being in it all these years later, before you jump into what you're going to present on?
Gosh, I gotta tell you, when I first got licensed, I was so like that, that you don't know what you don't know. Like that was me, like about everything in real estate. And I just was kind of trying to learn everything I could, and I felt like I knew nothing. And then now I know that I did indeed know nothing back then. And I'm still trying to figure things out, to be honest with you. But that was also, in a way, what it was, the scary part, but it was the exciting part for me too, is that I knew that I was learning a lot. I didn't even realize how much I didn't know, but I did know I was learning a lot, and I was willing to keep learning. And so I got licensed in the middle of '07, and I met Rick in '08. I'm pretty sure it was '08. Maybe it might have been the very beginning of '09. Nonetheless, because, and of course I met him somewhere where I was trying to learn. And that's the cool thing about the beginning phases that you sort of can't avoid, is you have to be in that learning mode. The sad part is sometimes those of us who have been in now, so now I've been licensed for 16, almost 17 years. And I try to keep learning still. I remember Rick said, something to me one day that I'd heard a lot of other people say, and it just felt like one of those sayings on the wall. You ever go into a company and there's literally sayings on the wall, but you know that there's no action behind it. But Rick said it to me one day, and I was like, oh shit, that's what that means. He called me a lifelong learner. And I was like, yeah. And it was referring, I told him about a class I just signed up for. I was trying to learn about and get better at. And when Rick said it, it hit me, and I was like, that's what that means. I had this mental block around that word. And so I think I still do that. I try to learn. I do that because I'm naturally curious. But I also, whether you're at that beginning phase or 15, 20, 30 years in, don't stop learning.
I love that. One thing that I would say that you have definitely committed to, in addition to learning, is giving back. And that's evidenced by when we put this opportunity out for people that wanted to share in a larger conversation and audience in honor of his legacy and keep that going. You were one of the first people to jump in and put yourself on that calendar. So I want to thank you for who you are, and that as you continue to be a learner, that you're also a contributor. So we're excited to hear from you today, and your topic. I mean, this could go so many different directions. And I'm excited to see the direction that you take the conversation today. And we, however you want to run it is up to you. Sometimes people will come off mute and say stuff, or they can put stuff in the chat, or, you tell us how you want to go and we'll go.
I'm very free flowing. I like when people comment or ask questions. And so at any point, if anybody wants to ask a question, whether that is like unmuting yourself and asking or typing it, I'm pretty good about checking chat. And if I'm missing something, someone can check me on that and just say, hey, there's a question. I tend to just either answer right then and there, or if I know it makes more sense to answer at a different place because of what I'm about to say, then I might say, hey, I'm going to get to that in 2 minutes, or come back to that. But I love participation. I always tell people I'm fairly boring unless there's participation. So I love the questions and the comments and the ahas and shares from people. So that's an invitation to everybody to not be shy.
I love that. Boring is not a word I would use to describe you. So that's interesting that you chose that one. I wouldn't put that anywhere near you.
Well, okay. So I'm fat. I'm so impatient. I just tend to go through everything really quickly. And so these 8 habits that I could do in 7 minutes or 8 minutes, or somebody might have a question or two, and it could be a really fun conversation for 30 or 45 or 50 or whatever our time limit is. And so that's that. I guess that's more what I mean. Maybe dry or something is more the word, but I'm gonna do my best.
All right.
So, are we good for me to just kind of jump into that?
Roll. You roll.
Awesome. So I love that. One of the things I love that you shared, Casey, in the intro was how we've got people at different stages. This sort of this class or this list of habits, was it something I initially worked with somebody on and put together for some business owners? And it was a little bit different. I've modified it more for what's going on in real estate right now. And even so for exactly the audience you mentioned we've had, where we've got people at different stages. Some people that I've presented this information to, but slightly different, have really large businesses. Sometimes there's 50, 100, 150 people on their sales team in real estate. And sometimes some people they got licensed last month and they're starting out, and anywhere and everywhere in between. And so these are really these are really just sort of 8 principles. They could get really down in the weeds if we wanted to. If there's a particular thing that jumps out to someone, we'll do it. But these are more, I want to think of foundational principles. And when I think of that, I think of like, in fact, I was talking about these 2 books yesterday, 2 of my favorite books of all time. A friend and I were talking about social media, and this kid is, bless his heart, he's 21, and made me realize that I'm definitely nowhere close to 21 anymore. But I'd asked him if you ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It. We were talking about video content. And I started making video content in 2009. And so I had him go back and read this book. I said, now, when you read the book, you got to understand the tools in there are so outdated. Like Gary talks about maybe one day, imagine this, one day you might be able to take video on your phone. Like, we just take that for granted now, right? But when Gary wrote that book, which 2009 wasn't that long ago, at least if you're in my age range, like that was, oh my gosh. And now it's like, I don't even remember there not being videos on our phones. And so that book, the principles are timeless. The tools in it are mostly outdated. Like, nobody has a Kodak ZI-8 camera anymore to record their video. Like, I still have mine for sentimental purposes, but nobody uses it. And the other book I was talking about with this young guy was the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. That was written in 2007. And by the way, he was talking about virtual assistants back then. Now they're like a common everyday thing, but most people think that's like a last 5-year phenomenon. It's not. Been around forever. That's one tool, but really it's the idea of the leverage and the way things can stay timeless. Forget about the tools, think about the principles. So that's kind of where this presentation lies, is in some principles. So I'm going to share these 8 habits. If you're taking notes, maybe just jot them down as I go through. Habit 1, I think, to get through the winter and have a successful business, especially in a time like this. And like I said, I was licensed in the middle of 07. I got licensed in the winter. And that is obviously a play on the words. I know it's January, but our industry, the cycle of real estate is in the winter right now. When you look at how low the number of sales are, how much longer the sales cycle is. Habit number 1 we've got to have is a predictable environment. And when I say predictable environment, what I'm talking about is, now this goes for me as the real estate agent, and if I'm in a leadership position at all, like I have direct reports or other agents looking to me, this goes for them too, I believe. Like, we've got to have expectations for our roles, like an expectation of, like, literally, if I'm my boss, what do I expect of me to do every day for my job? Like, I've got to get on that level. To me, that's part of a predictable environment. Another key component of the predictable environment is I've got to have a cadence to the day. When I say cadence to the day, that's another way of saying schedule. Like, my morning is for building business. My afternoon is maybe for going on appointments. Maybe my mid-afternoon is for kind of putting out fires, right? I've got a cadence to my day, because the last thing you want to do, especially in a time like this in the industry, is show up to the office and like not be really sure on what you should be working on today. So there's a cadence to the day in your predictable environment. If you're running a team of any sort, you've got a calendar that's got like your meetings or your classes, your events, like free coaching, like this would be on my calendar, right? And as well as any sort of resources and training. So again, my first habit is I have a predictable environment. I think without a predictable environment, it's just too easy to get caught up in the, what should I do today? And normally when we do that, it's not really that productive. So that's habit 1. Habit 2, I'm a big proponent of this one. I got to keep score. And what I mean, successful business owners, whether we're talking real estate or not, successful real estate agents, they keep score. They keep score of their activities. So if you look at, you go back to 4 disciplines of execution, you got lead activities and lag results. You got lead and lag, right? Lead activities is like, maybe it's the phone calls I make, or the number of handwritten notes or pop-bys I do in a day or in a week or in a month, or the appointments I hold, the buyer and seller agreements that I have signed. So the reason I need to keep track of these activities is because I need to know I need to know how I can define what winning looks like and what losing looks like on a daily basis. Because unfortunately in real estate, I had a mentor, Russell Shaw, say this to me very early on in my career. He said, the great thing about real estate is what you do today doesn't show up for like 180 days, 90 to 180 days. The bad part about real estate is that what you do today doesn't show up for like 90 to 180 days. So that's the good news and the bad news is like you can have a bad day today and it's okay. It's not like it's going to hurt your paycheck this month. But the problem is that bill will come due in 90 to 180 days in our industry. So the bad part of that is we might not realize how bad we're setting ourselves up. So on a daily basis, we got to know what winning looks like because the sales cycle is so long. I might meet someone today and they become a client in 6 months or 9 months from now. I've got to be able to know how I did my job today without having a closing. Most of us judge it purely on closings. If I got to close, but even if you're selling a lot of real estate, maybe you're selling 50 homes a year, that's still only a closing every once a week. Like that's not a lot of good feedback for knowing if you won. Casey, saw your hand up.
Yeah, so you obviously, I'm guessing that over the years, what winning looks like to you has evolved and changed, right? As you've continued to grow. And so can you give an example, like today, what does winning look like for you? How do you define that?
So I came up with a very loose, two loose ways to know I won. And, but they move me forward. When I think of my when I think of my recruiting business, which is where I spend most of my like active work time these days, I look at it as did I move one person forward today? So I think of like I think of like the sales process or the recruiting process as a set of steps. And my goal on this step is always just to get to the next step. So that's what I mean by move forward. So could I move one person forward today? The other tool that I use or lead activity is do something called 3 to Thrive. Did I touch 3 people today that are in my sphere of influence? And I can do that on my sales team and on my recruiting business. Did I just touch 3 people? I call it 3 to Thrive because it's such a low and easy number to use. You should get it. And over time, especially over years, like that just compounds and builds slowly. Now, I'll tell you, like in my real estate team in the sales business, what's really been our lead activities for, gosh, at least the last 9 or 10 years has been appointment set. And then the next number I look at is how many of those got actually held. And then how many of those hired us. And so like those were really, and then of course from there, I know how many closings I get. And so I don't even have to worry about that because it's just a math problem from there. So I've always like appointments set, appointments held, how many hired us. If I have a grasp on those numbers on my real estate sales team, everything else is easy. I don't need to worry about much else. That tells me the story of where my business is going to be in the next 90 days. Does that make sense? Perfect. So that
Thank
for
you.
me, that's keeping score. That's how I define winning and losing. I think another key thing, especially if you have people around you you're leading, like on your team or something, is I like some sort of scoreboard. I not not I know not everyone's super competitive. Not everybody's like gonna be energized by seeing their name. If maybe they're number 3 and they really want to be number 1. I know that does it for some people. I just think it's important though that everybody knows the score. It's not really about, hey, is Casey the top sales associate this month? Maybe like for Casey, that might actually be a thing and that could be awesome for her. But like for Michael might not care about that. And so maybe I'm not doing it because I want to shame Michael or necessarily make Casey feel great. It's just because I think if we're approaching this from a business standpoint, I think we all need to know the score. Like if we were out, if we were a basketball team, we'd want to know, we wouldn't know who's winning if we didn't have a scoreboard. So I think having a scoreboard is really important. So to me, that's why the second habit of getting through the winter is making sure we're keeping score. A friend of, you guys have probably all heard the term FOMO, fear of missing out. My dear friend Dustin Runyon taught me another acronym recently called FOFO, fear of finding out. Right? So that's like if you ever had to go do your budget or your net worth statement or audit your database, there's this fear of finding out that we got to get over, because if we don't find out where we're at, yeah, we can't really keep score, and we can't move. We don't, how do we even know if we're moving forward if we don't? In fact, it's like if you ever help somebody, or maybe you've been there, I've been there, like who's like really in debt, and it's like I really gotta pay these credit cards off or whatever the thing is. Like you got to know where you're at. Like you got to know where your starting point is, so you know how far to go, and actually have a plan and know if you're making progress. So that's why to me so vital that that second habit we have is keeping score, always keeping score. My third habit for making it through the winter is, and this kind of goes back in with that first habit, but I have it as a separate one, is I actively plan and manage my time. I believe actively planning and managing our time. I mentioned a cadence earlier, but I'm talking now a little more detailed. I believe successful business owners plan their days and their weeks, and they leverage a calendar to block their time. And I'm gonna underline this word. They mostly honor their time blocks. Listen, I'm not the guy that says that's just so overly rigid that doesn't understand that life happens and things come up. Certainly they do, but I can tell you right now, the successful business owners that I know, they mostly honor that. That's probably like a 95% of their time. Whatever their time block on their calendar says is what they're doing. Because there's always going to be some random unplanned work that occurs. There's going to be, fires with clients you got to put out. Personal life's going to show up. There's going to be a doctor's, whatever. Something's going to happen. But for the most part, really successful business owners and real estate agents, they follow a regular schedule. And I'll take it a step further. If you really want to make it through a tough time, or you're just trying to get yourself to that next level, that schedule gets openly shared with other people in your world. So for me, that schedule looks like my business partner has full access to my calendar. Sometimes it's because we got to put things on each other's calendars that we're both doing, or we're setting appointments. Our executive assistant has full access to my calendar, same way. My team can see it. My community within EXP can see it. Like they have access to certain parts of it, but it's shared. There's a responsibility, I think, that comes with having your calendar open into people. And by the way, you know what else is shared on there? I let them see my vacation. I take a lot of it. You know why? Because I plan that stuff ahead of time, way ahead of time. I know when I'm off. I know when I'm out of the. It's important. It lets people know that I value that, and I'm not taking an appointment during that time. So I believe that if I'm going to really take that third habit and actively plan and manage my time, my schedule is going to be openly shared with others, at least an assistant or maybe even my coworkers. So that's three. My fourth habit here that I have is I'm going to leverage my personal work time. What I mean by that is I'm going to have, at least on a weekly basis, and maybe for some of you, in some cases, a daily chunk of time to work exclusively on your own projects. Another way you've heard this said is working on your business and not just in your business, right? That's going to be one way. Is you've got to have some personal time in your personal work time. You got to leverage that work time to work in your business. For me, what that looks like now, most of my time is in my business when it comes to my sales team. But I'll tell you, the thing that's weekly for me, and it's formal, and I take it very seriously, is a block of time for thinking time, for no electronics, no connectivity to the world, either a whiteboard and a marker or a pen and a paper, and it's thinking time. And that doesn't have to be that could be an hour a week, 45 minutes a week. Could be, it could be 3 sessions of 45 minutes a week if you want. That stems from a book I read called The Road Less Stupid, which is absolutely one of my top 5 business books ever. And I think that's so important. My Casey's question there asked in the chat is my thinking time strategic or more sit and see what comes up? It's both for me. I do have sessions that it is no agenda. Effectively, the question is, what should I be thinking about? What am I not thinking about that I should be? And then sometimes it's very specific, like I've got X problem in my business. What are some ways I could do? And then, by the way, my next session after that might be to think about what I thought about the last time. Like maybe I said, hey, I'm having a problem. I'm going to make something up here. I'm having a problem with my onboarding system on my sales team. And the agents aren't getting trained and onboarded maybe as quickly as they should. And I'm going to start off with what are some possible solutions to that? That could be today's thinking time question. And I'm going to write down whatever comes to mind. I'm not going to judge it a whole lot. And there's going to probably be a few things that stick out to me over the course of this thinking time. And then my next thinking time session might just be to come back and look at a couple of those now that I've had a chance to let it marinate, and I'm going to think about it again. So it could look like that, very specific, or it could just look like, hey, what's going on right now? Like what am I missing? What am I not thinking about? Or it could be almost an informal brainstorm session, although I don't like to necessarily just turn it into a brainstorm session because I want to force myself to like think deeper and go like a layer or two below the surface on these subjects that I'm not giving myself the time to throughout the course of like, all my daily activities on my calendar. Because sometimes I just get surface level on that stuff. And so I got to give myself time to go a little bit deeper. So that's that piece. So that's again, go back to that, kind of wrap that up. That's leverage. I'm leveraging my personal work time weekly. For some people, it's daily chunk of time that's blocked exclusively to work on your own personal projects. And listen, especially if you're newer in the business, it can be hard, and I should say it's easy to justify. There's no such thing as working on the business because I'm too busy working in it. That is a limiting belief. And I promise you, if you just take 30 minutes out of your week, everybody has 30 minutes. I promise you, you're not at your max capacity every single working hour that you have. There's some super productive people on this call, but everybody could find 30 minutes if it was a priority to them. Like there's something where we could trim some time off of. And if you just take the time doesn't have to be thinking time the way I described it, but if you just took 30 minutes to work on your business, as opposed to doing all the tasks you got to do, you'd probably have some revelations and realizations about your business and places you could take it. So I'm a big proponent of that. So that is that's habit number 4, leveraging personal work time. The 5th habit, kind of a deeper level of the FOFO I talked about, is we got to understand the financials. Listen, I just don't know a successful business owner that doesn't understand their financials. Like, not only do they review their monthly financials, but they understand what they are reviewing. Okay. I know I got a lot of friends, and listen, details is not my love language. I'm not a details guy, but I understand my books. This is one of those things where, yes, it's harder for me, and it could be harder for you too, or maybe it's easy for you to look at numbers. But the point is, I'm not a numbers person, or I'm not a math person. Does not fly in the world of business. It's not an okay excuse. And so I firmly believe you have got to understand the financials. The process of how you review them, I don't believe actually matters as much as just having an awareness. And so for me, I've got kind of 2 things in my process. Fred and I have a weekly process where we just quickly review every penny we spent the previous week. It's just to make sure there's nothing out of the ordinary, and to kind of like check ourselves from spending like drunken sailors in our business. And so there's a process there. And the other process is then we have a monthly review with our bookkeeper to go through the financials. And that's just 30 minutes a month where we actually go through the P&Ls. And then the last piece on it is have more than your own eyes on it. This is for multiple reasons. Number one, we all have blind spots. Even those of us like that take the time to review our stuff. Everybody's got a blind spot. I don't care if it's your coach, if it's a peer, an accountability buddy, a mentor. Somebody else should have their eyes on your financials too. For me, my real estate coach gets a copy of my financials. He has for the last 13 years. And my bookkeeper sees them obviously because he's going through them with me as well. Casey, saw your hand up.
So, this can be an uncomfortable thing to do, right? Our growth and operations partner, Selena, when we had her look at it, she goes, well, the biggest item that's on your P&L. We're like, what? Can you guess what it was?
Wine?
No, close. It was eating out. She's like,
That
you're
was
spending $4,000 to $5,000 a month eating out. And it was because all of the 99% of the time we're eating out is with a client or in the context of a, recruiting meeting with an agent, right? And so all of those meetings are happening over meals. And it was like, oh my goodness. It just like, it created an awareness of this is an area to go, is it like, obviously there's things that are effective, not effective about that, but then like that awareness of just, oh my gosh, if it was just Rick and I that knew that, but now Selena knows it too.
You know what?
What are we
That is
doing
so
on
good.
yeah.
That is such a great example because you know what? You could look at that and go, you know what, man, we should really change that. Or you should just go, you know what? I didn't know it was that high and it's worth it. We're going to keep doing it. But at least now you're aware because I bet you would. I'm just guessing, Casey, and please tell me if I'm wrong. Don't just agree with me if for the heck of it. Like if you had to, before she said that to you, if you had to guess, if I said, Casey, how much do you think you spend on eating out every month? Would you have guessed it's that high?
I would have guessed 2 to 3. I mean, Rick would always pick up the bill wherever he went. So I knew it was going to be high, but to think about that, it's, that close to the average household joint income in the United States for most people is a little obscene,
Yeah.
you know?
It's
Yeah.
pretty wild. And again, it just because I think the value in that is the just being the aware. And yeah, can it be uncomfortable when someone points that out to you? Yep. And you know what else is uncomfortable? Growth. You know what else is even more uncomfortable? Not growing. So like it's so valuable to have that extra set of eyes. Thank you for sharing that example. I think that was like that's a super good example and a great lesson. Habit 6. This one's near and dear to my heart. I love this one. I've been telling people to do this from as long as I can remember, which is teach nonstop. Listen, people that make it through tough times and the people that build huge businesses, they teach. They're just always teaching sales skills, leadership, investing, life skills, motivation, you name it, personal development. This looks like group settings. This can look like one-on-one if you've got like team members that report to you in any way. This could look like if you've got a large team, like team development. If you are, let's say you're running a big real estate team, you want to recruit agents to your team, there's no better way than to teach. Trust me. Like if you teach, you will trip over recruits. If you want to generate business, just teach. There are so many benefits, sharpens your skill. It's great for you. Like it's great for your own skill set. Cause if you're going to teach something, it forces you to at least learn it a little bit more than you do currently know it. And of course, when you have a really big team and you want to make change, the only way to actually really impact change is to teach. Like you've got to teach other people the skills that they need to have to grow. So like if you've got a big business and you're trying to impart change into that business, you just got to what you got to do is you got to teach more. Like I think that's a deeply That's a deeply held belief I have. I'm always open to being wrong on things, but that is something that I've just seen sort of pop up. And I think even more so in a time like this in the winter, people are looking for leaders, and teaching is leading. And so even if it's just for the moment, they're looking for someone to be at the front of the room and go, hey, come on, I know the way through. I can help you with this. People are all, they're always looking for leadership, but especially in tougher times, they're looking for leaders. And so teaching to me is just one of those things that's a habit that's got to be done. All right, on to habit 7 here. Seventh habit of the 8 is got to be an executive athlete. Now, it's not exact. I'm not telling you to go out and take up football or anything today, but the example I list out is like be the Tom Brady of business. I like to use Tom Brady as an example because the guy played football till he's like 45 years old. It's pretty impressive. Like most don't make it that far. And forget about the fact he won more Super Bowls than anybody. The guy played till he was 45 at an elite level. And he did that because he focused on his health and energy. And so when I think of that, I think of like, so Tom went out and did his job as the quarterback for his football teams. You're the quarterback for your real estate business. And so you want to focus on your energy and your health every day. And to me, also part of being an executive athlete is being committed to your personal development and growth. My last habit I talked about was teaching. Go be a student too. Like this is some of my friends, and I'm not naming any of them, but I've got some friends who I love dearly. They're only in the room if they're at the front of the room speaking. And that is like one of my big, I think that's the biggest mistake. Like I had a friend text me. I invited a friend to an event late last year, and he said, "Listen, I'm just really trying to focus on only going to events where I'm speaking at." And I responded, I said, "I love you, dude. I got to be honest with you. My goal is literally the exact opposite of that. I've heard myself speak a lot. I want more rooms where I'm the student. I think we got to have a balance of it. I think it's a slippery slope when we're always the teacher. We got to be this. I don't even know this. Casey and I have never talked about this, but if I'm in a room with Casey, I'm usually the one listening. Casey taught me a skill that I have retaught maybe 500 times now in the last 3 years. I know where she taught. I wasn't even in the room. I just watched the video of it probably 25 times. And then I've retaught it, like I said, literally hundreds of times. 500 might be the exaggeration, but 150 or 200 times would not be an exaggeration, where she taught this process. Like, and Casey, by the way, I've noticed is taking notes, and she's asked a few questions already. So I know this is something, whether she's ever verbalized this or not, this is something that I'm guessing she also really deeply connects with. Because if we're going to go out and lead, we also got to go out and be led. Like we've got to be the student, not just the teacher. There's just something about that I see my friends make mistakes. I think on that, because to me that says I've stopped learning. Uh, there's nothing left. Once you consider yourself the expert, no one else can teach you anything. And so you've got to be committed to personal development and growth. And then the last piece of this habit of being an executive athlete to me is being purposeful with our circle, being purposeful with who we're spending our time with. That doesn't mean don't be friends with your friends, but it does mean absolutely be guarded with the amount of time you're spending and be purposeful with who you're spending that time with. Right. So I've got some friends who I love dearly that I've known in some cases 30 plus years that I just don't see as much, not because I don't love them, I do, but there's some other friends that I'm going to just make sure I talk to way more often, because we're on a path, and it's similar, and there's a growth trajectory that we're both after. And so I'm going to spend more of my time there, because at the end of the day, my life I'm responsible for my life, and that's most important to me from that standpoint. So I'm going to be really purposeful about who I spend time with. All right. Habit 7, or that was habit 7, being executive athlete. Here's another one. Now, listen, I'm going to use the word recruiting in a moment. You could use the word sales. It doesn't matter to me. This is, again, just a habit. This is a principle, whether you're just looking for more buyers and sellers. But I think even if you're a solo agent who just got licensed, I still think this applies. Okay. That habit 8 is have a value proposition and always have recruiting on your mind. Have a value proposition and always have recruiting on your mind. In my opinion, great business leaders know the value that they bring to their people. And listen, I know some people that like, I'm not sure that it matches their what they think it is, but they've got a value prop and they're confident in what they bring to the table. And they're always thinking about people to bring into their perspective worlds, if you will. So you've got a value prop and you're always thinking about, hey, how could I maybe be in business with this person one day? That might look like they become a client, a listing client, a buyer client, a buyer's agent, a showing assistant, an executive assistant. Maybe they want to join my brokerage. Maybe they want to join whatever. Recruiting always. It doesn't mean don't look at people as human beings, because it certainly does. It doesn't mean that, but it just means the great business leaders that I know, they've got recruiting on their mind pretty much at all times. And they're always thinking about it. Because when you have like a recruiting opportunity, let's say you've got a job opening, let's say you need to hire an executive assistant. And you meet someone and they would make an amazing executive assistant. Maybe they already have. Like that might actually be the most humanistic thing you could ever do for that person, was help them get a job in your world that is literally perfect fit for them. So I actually think this is really about other people at the same time as it's about us. And so I'm going to always be recruiting is on my mind 100% of the time. Casey.
What I'm hearing you say when you say that, and this is just like my language that I would put that into, is having antenna up or feelers out for talent, because I know that the more talent I surround myself with, there's something for me to give, but there's also places for me to grow and expand, that if I've got the right talent and people in place that become part of what I'm creating, building, it's going to be able to take me further than I could take myself or an organization if it stays static looking the way that it looks today.
Yeah, 100%. Because if we're at some point, if we want to grow, this is a belief of mine. I think it's always going to be at a certain point, early on, it's about us and our activities. And then at a certain point, it's pretty much always going to be about relationships with other people, right? So our business and our lives are going to grow because of relationships. And so when you have those antennas up, like you just mentioned, and you're always looking for talent, I'll tell you what I used to do too. I remember early on in this kind of journey for me, which would have been like 2014, 2015, I was interviewing for positions I didn't even have open. I mean, not only was I like thinking like this, but I literally started interviewing people, especially if they looked at all talented. I got to know them, because the thing I did believe is if they were so talented that they blew my mind, I'd probably go find a way to get in business with them. Like if they were that, and I'll tell you, like that created and helped me develop some really great relationships that I still have, a decade later. And so, yeah, and those antennas out for talent at all times. And I'm a strong believer. And at a certain point, we're only growing because of the relationships we have, because I do know that there's only 24 hours in a day, and which means we can only do so many activities. And so if we want our worlds to get bigger, it's going to have to come through other people.
All right, now I have a really hard question.
Yeah,
Are you ready for a really hard question?
I am.
I'm looking at my notes and I've got habit 1 is predictable environments. Habit 2, keeping score of activities. Habit 3, actively planning and managing time. Habit 4, leveraging personal work time to work exclusively on my own projects. Habit 5, understanding the financials. Habit 6, teaching nonstop. Habit 7, being an executive athlete. And habit 8, having a value proposition, always having, recruiting or attraction talent on my mind. And our talk today is about winter. However, I'm not thinking of any other season, spring, summer, or fall, where this will also wouldn't be applicable.
Exactly. This is
Okay.
this is 100% of the time. But I feel like if we focus on this now, here's why I called it for getting through the winter. A lot of these things are the first to get overlooked when it's hard. Why? Because the sales cycle is longer. I'm showing more houses, or I'm actually doing more consults and making more phone calls to get to one sale. And so I'm actually having to do more work right now than I would have 2 years ago to get a deal. And which means like that's just literally requiring more of me. And the first thing that happens is like, okay, executive athlete, like I just didn't wake up. I got up early, but instead of going and working out first, like I hurried up and got dressed and I went to the office because I gotta get going. Or I skipped something else, or like, you know what, I don't have time for that financial review this month. It's just so easy to say no to this stuff. And so to me, the reason I call get us through the winter is yes, like that's the punchline is this is all the time. But for the winter, these things to me, they just get overlooked too easy.
So it's really about taking this time called winter in real estate uh and creating the opportunity to create habits and disciplines that when the season shifts and changes, those are in place to continue, because winter's always going to be coming once you're out of it.
It's all, yeah, it's all, that's the thing is winter's all, if the thing that we know that's true every day forever is if you're not in winter, then winter is coming. And so might as well just be prepared for it.
I love that. Well, I have kind of dominated the question asking. However, that's because I love what you're talking about, and it's getting my, my mind firing and thinking in different ways, which in collaboration and community and being a student and a teacher and all of the things, there's all these different ways to listen, right? So I've been listening through this lens of like, okay, how do I take these 8 habits and look at where I have things that are working, and then where I can personally improve, and then also looking at it through the context of, okay, because I lead organizations of people, now how do I take this from a teacher perspective, like the personal application, and then the teacher perspective to fit the culture, community, and messaging for, which is a little bit more individualized and tailored for, for our people. So I think like I love that you've been willing to, come and so freely share, because my wheels are turning on so many different levels and in so many different ways, right? And I find that like being in a different conversation, and even if it's a similar conversation with different people bringing a different perspective like you brought to the call today, the idea is to get thing to look right, being willing to like pull up the hood and look, where sometimes it's easier to just leave the hood down and like, we're still running. So it's okay because things are still running, and I know there's things to improve in there. However, if I don't really look at them, I'm not actually clear like exactly what's, going to be like the now things to improve. And then we know that that's a very temporary strategy. So I'm grateful for you to, come to this conversation today for the benefit for me. I know I'm not alone, I'm sure, even though I've been the most vocal, because it tends to like, I love the engagement of learning and growing and firing new synapses in the brain and getting things moving. But I'd love to open it up for anyone else that might have been a little bit more shy, because I was faster to the unmute button or the raise the hand button than anyone else might have been on the call today.
Thanks for sharing that, by the way. But,
Yeah.
and yeah, would love any other questions and happy to, and by the way, anybody, like if one of the things I shared, like you're like, no, I don't get it. Like, feel free to challenge me. Like we can have a conversation on it because, I have, I said it earlier, something like when I was talking about teaching nonstop, like it's something I believe in deeply, but there's a saying that I really love, which is strong convictions held loosely. Like I'm okay to change my mind. Like I believe I'm always okay. I love to be, if I feel like if I can't be challenged, then that means that I'm no longer actually thinking. I've just decided something. I see this a lot in our world. The easy example is politics. I don't actually really think something. I just think I think something. And so you can always challenge me if one of these habits like you maybe just don't get or flat out disagree with. I love it because that's how we grow.
I just want to hop on and say really fast, this was incredible today. You said everything perfectly. I've been in the business, licensed 18 years, and I didn't start off with coaching and mentorship, which was my biggest challenge. And I always jokingly say I've been freestyling for all these years. But any of you new agents on this call, really take what he said to heart. Everything resonated so strongly with me. So really take heed of this. This was great. I'm glad I got on today. I'm going to have to do a replay on this one. But I just want to thank you for all of those great points today. So
Thank you very much.
I will be following you. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
you're
And
welcome.
you do have the Facebook group Mastermind. Will you put that in the in the chat? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure do. So I literally started a Facebook group. It's it's for real estate agents that doesn't matter what company you're at, doesn't matter what production level you're at. It's called Next Level Agents. For me, the name Next Level Agents is just because what I like is trying to get to whatever our next level is. So whether you are somebody who maybe you're a solo agent, you're doing, one deal a year, or you just did your first deal and you want to figure out how to do 25 a year, or you're already doing 50 a year, you want to try figure out how to do 100 or whatever. We all have another like that next level. And for me, that just signifies like I'm actually going after something. And so Next Level Agents, just a Facebook group. It's kind of it's an online community where we try to share education, and webinars, things like that. Nothing for sale in there. Just literally a community of real estate agents across the country.
I love that. And for those of you that want to go back and access the call from today, I put the link of where you'll find it, and it'll be posted later today. You'll see a bright green little thing that says access call here. All right, well, we are coming to the top of the hour. So thank you, Kevin, again for being with us today, and for everyone else for jumping on the call. We will have we'll have the next call on Friday, February 18th will be our next Free Friday coaching call. So looking forward to seeing you all there. And everyone go out and make it a great rest of your day and week and weekend until we meet again.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Thank you, guys.